How's it going, you guys? So in this video, I'm going to be going over how to eat a ketogenic diet and be a high-level athlete, okay? So there's a lot of misinformation and misconceptions about ketogenic diets and if you can do MMA and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu without carbohydrates. And I have made plenty of videos explaining why that is that's a foolish statement to make, and why you can definitely refill glycogen and do explosive activity, glycolytic exercise or glycolytic exercise. You can do all the things you do with carbohydrates, but even better and more efficiently when you're keto adapted. Okay, I made plenty of videos talking about that. Typically it takes about 4 weeks before your body starts to fully adapt, but when it does, it feels like you have unlimited energy. You recover a lot better, and you'll notice you don't feel as sore, you don't feel as beat up. A lot of the aches and pains go away because this diet is highly anti-inflammatory in nature. So the other thing is the body actually breaks down lactic acid in order to produce energy when you're on a ketogenic diet. And if you want more information on all of that, definitely read The Art and Science of Low Carb Performance by Stephen Finney and Jeff Bullock, PhD. Amazing book highlighting their over 100 scientific papers, peer-reviewed research on ketogenic diets and athletic performance. So, with that out of the way, let's get into how to make the ketogenic diet work for the high-level athlete. Okay, so first of all, the most important thing, the number one most important thing that most people get wrong is electrolytes. If you are an athlete on a ketogenic diet, you need to be consuming at least 5 grams of sodium per day, okay? Extra salt. You can't just salt your food to taste, okay? If you salt your food to taste and you tell yourself that, my electrolytes are on check, I'm getting plenty of sodium, you should see the piles I put on my food, you're a fool. You need to be measuring your fucking salt, okay? If you're an athlete, you can't just wing things, okay? It needs to be systematic, and you need to be measuring, okay? You need to track your protein, track your fat, track your food. You're an athlete, for crying out loud. If you're really serious about your performance, you really want to perform well, you will track your sodium intake, okay? So what I do is I take a half a teaspoon of salt in the morning, and then another half a teaspoon right before my workout. And that brings me up to about 2 grams of sodium. And typically, so then I'll put, I'll take another, I'll keep taking doses of 1/2 to 1 whole teaspoon throughout the day until I hit about 5 to 6 grams of sodium. Some people are going to need more. Some people are going to need 7. But the thing is, you're not going to overdo it on sodium, okay? Most people, they think, that's insane amounts of salt, blah, 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 and they freak out, Well, most of the things in the ketogenic diet are completely the opposite of what you've been told. And so you've got to get over that limiting belief of salt and fat in order to survive and feel the superhuman benefits. People say, I don't feel all that mental clarity and stuff that everyone else says that they do on keto. Probably because of your electrolytes, and probably you're not eating enough fat. So, a minimum of 5 grams. Some people are going to need more, and this is extremely important in the first 4 weeks, okay? When you feel, what they call the keto flu, that's hyponatremia, and it won't show up on a blood test either. It's low salt, okay? If you do not get enough salt, you will feel like shit. You will feel tired. You will feel lethargic. And even if you don't think that you're feeling bad, believe me when I say you will feel like 20 times better when you get your salt and your potassium on check, okay? The reason why this is important is because sodium regulates the retention of other electrolytes in the cells, okay? And so if you don't get enough salt, what happens is your body starts to waste potassium, magnesium, and even calcium and other minerals. So sodium is number one, 3 teaspoons per day, minimum. Next thing is a potassium salt substitute. So, first of all, disclaimer, if you have kidney problems or you have type 2, or if you have diabetes or heart failure, do not take potassium, okay? You can get a lot of potassium from meat. Believe it or not, people don't know this, but meat's one of the richest sources of potassium. Okay, the thing is, um, so 4 ounces of beef, for example, if you eat the drippings from the meat, you're going to get about 400 milligrams per 4 ounces. It depends on the type of meat, but a good rule of thumb is 1 pound of meat contains anywhere from 1 to 2 grams of potassium, and at minimum, I think most average people should be getting, even women, should be getting about 2 pounds of red meat or 2 pounds of meat minimum, okay, on a ketogenic diet or just in general, really. But that's going to supply you with all the protein you need, with the majority of the fat that you're going to need if it's fatty meat. And if you eat the drippings from the meat, boiling your meat, making broth, you'll get plenty of potassium in there. But it's still very important to get extra potassium, okay? And so most of the leading experts and the general consensus on ketogenic diets recommend around 1.5 grams of supplemental potassium. And so this salt substitute is the best option. A lot of people use light salt, which is about a 50-50 blend of sodium to potassium, and it also contains iodine in there. But I prefer to use this. I use about 1/4 of a teaspoon of this, combined with about 1 to 2 teaspoons of Redmond's real salt in the morning. So that gives me about 1 to 2 grams of sodium and about 700 milligrams of potassium immediately in the morning. Okay. Be careful not to drink too much water, but drink just enough to hydrate and dilute the nutrients. Typically, I've actually noticed I feel extremely thirsty, and I'll drink a shit ton of water, and no amount of water will hydrate me unless I get enough salt. And typically, when you feel really thirsty, especially on a keto diet, if you notice your urine is clear and you're still thirsty, that's not because you need more water. It's because your body's not retaining the water, okay? So, you need potassium and you need sodium, not water, okay? So, yeah. If you're not supplementing with potassium and you don't have those underlying health issues I was talking about, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to have a lot of problems until you supplement with potassium and sodium. Now, after the first 4 weeks of the diet, after your body's fully gotten used to operating without carbohydrates, you're not going to need to supplement with potassium, okay? Some people might, but most people won't, because the body starts to adapt to the fuel source. A lot of people ask, well, if this diet was like a natural human thing, blah, 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 why do you need a supplement? Well, after a while, your body needs less salt and less potassium, and it's just a matter of adapting, because you spent your entire life adapted to burning carbohydrates. Your entire body has to completely shift most of its metabolic processes from burning exogenous dietary carbohydrates to converting endogenous body fat into both ketones and glycogen. So your glycogen needs are going to be fueled by fat. You're literally going to convert free fatty acids and the glycerol backbone of triglycerides into glycogen. So, you can literally turn fat into energy, body fat into energy. You can kind of say that you're turning fat into muscle, even though you're not, but you're fueling your muscle with your body fat. That's literally what happens when you're keto adapted. So then we got magnesium. Now this is magnesium carbonate. but I'm not too concerned about the bioavailability of the magnesium that I'm using in my Keto Raid or my electrolyte supplement. I take about 50 milligrams to about 100 milligrams of magnesium in the morning with my potassium and sodium. And I might take the same dose like one or two other times, like later on in the day. But I like to get most of my magnesium before bed. And so I got this is is a multi-source magnesium. It has magnesium malate, magnesium amino acid chelate, and magnesium citrate. Yeah, and this is great. Highly absorbable, multiple forms. I take about anywhere from 100 to 400 milligrams at night. Sometimes 800, but I've been experimenting with that. I like to take small doses throughout the day to enhance the absorption of potassium, and then I will take a higher dose before bed to help me with sleep. But I notice I actually don't need magnesium to sleep as long as I am on a ketogenic diet. It's weird how as soon as I went keto, I immediately was able to sleep. It's fascinating. So the next tip is, look, you're gonna have to get used to eating fat. You're gonna have to get used to eating a lot of fucking fat, okay? You're an athlete, okay? You're an athlete. If you don't get enough fucking salt and potassium and shit, if you don't get used to eating ungodly amounts of sodium, you're gonna get cramps, you're gonna feel like shit. And if you don't get used to eating sticks of butter a fucking day, again, I mean, you'll drop a lot of weight, but your body might actually stop losing weight at a certain point because it doesn't have enough energy, and so you get what's called adaptive thermogenesis, where your body starts to lower its energy expenditure to compensate with the lack of fuel coming in. So if you wonder why you're feeling like shit and you believe you have your electrolytes on check, you're going to have to look at your chronometer or your MyFitnessPal, but preferably chronometer, okay? This is why you need to track your shit. Most people, they just wing it. They're like, oh, I'm eating plenty of fat and eating plenty of salt. But then you ask them, okay, how much exactly are you getting? They're like, oh, I don't know, I don't track. I eat fat to satiation and I salt my food to taste. Like, okay, motherfucker, track your shit. That's why you feel like crap, because you're being dumb. Just randomly winging it. Like, duh, you're gonna feel like shit. Okay? Track your fat intake. Make sure you're getting at least a 1-to-1 ratio between fat and protein. As a general rule of thumb, I have found it's best to get at least 1 gram of protein per pound of lean mass. But I found, especially in my heavier training cycles, it's better to get more like 1.2 to 1.3 grams per pound of body weight, okay, of protein per pound of lean mass, okay? So if you're about 160 pounds of lean mass, maybe around 160 to 200 grams of protein is probably the ideal range. And then 1 to 1 grams protein to fat. So if you're getting 100 grams of protein, you need 100 grams of fat. Got me? That's very important, okay? So in my morning coffee, I have 4 tablespoons of butter and 3 tablespoons of coconut oil, and then 1 tablespoon of brain octane, okay? That's amazing. That already gives me what? 15, 30, 60, something like, oh damn, I just dropped my brain octane. Thank God it didn't break. Oh my God, that was scary. That was the scariest thing ever. Damn, that shit's expensive and it's like liquid gold. Look guys, I get about 100 grams of fat immediately in the morning. And I feel so much better now than when I didn't get enough. Okay, when I used to just do 1 tablespoon, like a regular bulletproof coffee, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of MCT, that didn't do it for me. When you're burning a shit ton of energy as an athlete, you need to be eating a lot as an athlete. Think back to when you were a kid and you used to eat everything in sight, okay, or when you were a teen. And unless, of course, you were weird, you probably took every single opportunity to eat food that you possibly can. And your parents would tell you, oh, he's a growing boy, he's a growing kid, or whatever. That's what my parents told me. So you need to eat like that again. You're an athlete. You want to have the energy of a growing teenager? You need to eat like a growing teenager. You have a high energy expenditure, okay? You need to eat as much calories coming in as you plan to burn out. Without eating enough fat, what happens is you don't give your body the caloric energy that it needs in order to, fully expend itself the next day. Now, keep in mind that because your body is more adapted, so after 4 weeks, you'll notice that you feel more energetic without needing as much fuel, okay? I've noticed after the 4-week mark, I can do like 20-hour fasts and do 3 hard training sessions during that fast. So I could fast an entire day and do a whole day's worth of multiple session MMA training, hard sparring, heavy bag, strength and conditioning, and then not even feel hungry and still feel good and energized. And that's because after 4 weeks, your body adapts to burning its own body fat as fuel. Now, I will tell you, especially if you're relatively lean, it's still a good idea to be consuming, enough fat to sustain your energy needs, okay? The last thing that you want is to crash and burn and feel like crap, and especially last thing you want is to wrongfully blame carbohydrates as the problem. Oh, I need carbs, blah, blah, blah. But you're eating in an extreme caloric deficit. So, yeah, so that's it pretty much. The main thing is understand the first 2 to 4 weeks you're gonna feel like crap, and to remove that feeling of crap, make sure you get enough fucking salt, make sure you get enough fat. 9 out of 10 people who say they have problems on a keto diet or that their performance suffers on a keto diet, they're not measuring their sodium, they're not measuring their potassium, they're not measuring their fat intake, they're not eating enough of those nutrients, and they're ignorant is the truth. They are ignorant as to how you're supposed to be doing this diet. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's the way it is. So, that's the main thing as a keto adapted athlete. You need to be eating enough fat instead of carbs. That's your fuel source. You need to be eating enough protein, 1 gram per pound of lean mass minimum. Get enough salt, 5 grams of sodium minimum, 3 teaspoons of salt. And then around 1 gram of supplemental potassium. That's going to be, like a half a teaspoon of potassium supplement substitute or whatever. And then get about 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium per day. A cheap and probably not the best idea is Epsom salts for magnesium. But the bioavailability of that is probably very thin. And then as a bonus tip, for pre-workout, a really good idea is to make a coffee. What I do is, I told you already, but like a large amount of butter and coconut oil, and then brain octane, okay? And right now I'm using about a tablespoon of brain octane until I know that my bowel tolerance can tolerate that. So you want to start slowly if you've never taken it before, about a half a teaspoon at first, and slowly build up. Otherwise, you'll have explosive diarrhea. Another bonus tip, you need calcium. I take bone meal, about a teaspoon a day. It's very important, not only for electrolyte balance, but also just for feeling your best and to prevent bone loss as you get older. It's probably the best and most absorbable form of calcium possible. And then, if you really feel like you need carbs, okay, believe it or not, people think they need to eat potatoes all day and shit. You don't need to eat potatoes all day. As you could do a targeted ketogenic approach. where you take dextrose powder. Looks like I don't know where my dextrose powder is, but I don't use that. I've tried a targeted approach. Typically, the most that is recommended is 7 to 20 grams of dextrose pre-workout. And since you're still eating under 20 grams of net carbs from the dextrose, and you're taking it right before your workout, you're going to work off all that glucose during your workout if it's intense enough, and you'll be able to be back in ketosis by the next morning. Mixing dextrose with creatine is probably a really good option. Now, for me, I eat plenty of red meat, so I get plenty of creatine. 3 pounds of red meat is going to give me about 10 grams of creatine, and that's kind of leaving me at it's like pointless for me to supplement at that point. But if you really want to boost your energy, mixing dextrose powder and creatine in a targeted keto approach might give you a boost. I've experimented with carbs multiple times in the last year and a half that I've been keto, and I've experienced maybe a mental boost, but not a performance boost. And a big reason why carbs boost performance for people who switch over from keto is simply because they didn't get their electrolytes on point. And when you eat carbs, it helps you retain electrolytes, retains water and electrolytes. So eating carbs and then experiencing a boost, a lot of that has to do with maybe you weren't eating enough fat, maybe you weren't eating enough protein, maybe you weren't keto adapted, and so your body was looking for carbs that it didn't have. But the big one is electrolytes. People who have dry eyes and they say carbs help them. It's because you didn't have enough salt, and you eat carbs, and those carbs help to regulate minerals and electrolytes. So of course you're gonna feel better. But if you get your electrolytes on point, you won't notice that benefit. That's what I found. And so the best book on all of this is going to be The Art and Science of Low Carb Performance by Stephen Finney and Jeff Volek. Now, in this book, for some reason, they only mention taking 1 to 2 grams of extra sodium per day. But if you read their blogs and their lectures, they correct themselves and they say 5 grams of sodium per day. But that's the best book on all of this, if you really want to read into the benefits and the science behind it for sports performance. So leave your question, comments down below. Let me know if you've been doing a keto diet for sports performance or if you've thought about it, and I'd love to have a discussion.